What's up, schmoozers? Welcome back to this week's episode of Schmoozing Time. For those of you that are new here, my name is David Cobby, and I am on a mission to share the stories of proud Jews talking about their personal brands. Today's guest is absolutely remarkable and is proof that anyone can turn their life around if they put their mind to it. Struggling with addiction is probably the toughest thing that anyone has to physically and mentally deal with. My next guest managed to completely turn his life around and has now become completely sober for 8+ years. In addition to this individual recently made an appearance on a reality TV show and has built a work ethic in the gym and his profession like none other. Please welcome to my show, Hayempour. Ellie, how we doing, brother?
Baruch Hashem, thank God. We're good. It's a beautiful day. Thanks for having me on.
Thank God. Of course, man. I mean, listen, like I know we're all busy with the Chagim, but you just became a dad, so I want to again congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
How's that been going?
It's been beautiful. I'm on paternity leave, so I've been off of work going on week 5 now. It's been a blessing, you know. Mm-hmm. The money could wait. Thank God Hashem has blessed us so we can take some time off of work. And, you know, it's been beautiful, you know. Life kind of hits you in the face, you know, with these things. It hits you slowly. You know, you don't just have a kid and then you're like, you know, it's like a slower process of, you know, realizing how much life's changed. I mean, for me, you know, some people, you know, 18, 19, 20, 21, they get married. Kids, normal, no drugs, you know, they're not crazy. So, you know, they've had a smooth life. So it's, you know, that's just a norm for them. But for addicts, alcoholics, people that struggle with addiction, once you sober up and you're putting your life back together, I feel like you appreciate, not to say that normal people don't appreciate things, but I think we appreciate things a level more than normal people just because we were, you know, in the dumps, and then, you know, we turn our lives around, and now I have a beautiful wife and a kid, and, you know, it's just amazing, man, you know? I don't want to start crying yet, so just stop it. No, I'm just kidding.
For you to be so vulnerable about your struggle with addiction absolutely amazes me, because I know people that have an addiction that have gone through shit, and like, yeah, they recover, but they don't talk about it. And I think it's something else what you're doing. You're able to recover, obviously. It's one thing to recover from addiction, right? It's another thing to like be open about it and talk about it, which I think is absolutely amazing. So I want to get, you know, right into it.
Sure.
Obviously, this is not the most exciting and peaceful topic to talk about, I guess. But
no, bro, I talk about this every day.
Addiction is it's something that, you know, a lot of people struggle with. And, you know, I, on this podcast, especially, like a lot of what I do is try and promote positive vibes. Like that's what I'm about. But
yeah,
I think with somebody like you, you know, you as a person were kind of made because of your struggle with addictions.
The number one question everyone always asks is, what makes you an addict? Are you born an addict? I don't have the answers to that. I just know that when I do drugs or alcohol, it changes me as a person. You know, there's a bunch of sayings. 1 is too many, 1,000 is never enough. So when I put drugs or alcohol into my body, I don't have control over it. I become the drug. The drug takes over Ellie, and then there's no more Ellie left at the end of the run. So, you know, starting young, I mean, grew up in a Chabad family. Not crazy Orthodox. You know, my father wore kapata, hat, everything. I feel like the drinking started at a young age, you know, going to shul, seeing people drink, and then graduating to higher substances later on in high school. Didn't go to the best high school at the time. You know, I went to Masnaget High School. Nothing against, you know, that. Just that kind of yeshivish vibe really didn't sit well with me. And I turned to other things. Weed, pills, benzos, and then I mean, man, dude, I don't even know where to start, but ended up in yeshiva in Israel when I was 17, dropped out of high school in 11th grade, went to Israel, the drug thing continued. Then I left Israel. Long story short, our whole yeshiva got caught for selling hash, smoking hash, this, that. I left yeshiva, got out, came back to the States. I got arrested like 2-3 months later for Oxycontin. That was my first introduction to like AA and all that. I got a felony, but that was 2008, 2007, 2008. The felonies back then, they would do something called PC 1000, where they would send you to drug court. So you would go to meetings, all this stuff. In 2008 in Los Angeles, it was a couple years after the medical marijuana boom. So I had a medical marijuana card, which is medicinal. So I was able to smoke weed and still go to these drug classes. So I was never really sober. Then I moved to Las Vegas. We'll fast forward a bunch through all the wreckage of my life. I got arrested a couple more times. Ended up moving to Las Vegas. Was there for about 4 years. Made a lot of money, lost a lot of money. And then my parents actually flew down to Las Vegas to kind of like talk me into leaving and going to rehab. I came back to LA with them. I went to rehab for a little bit, for like 2 weeks, and then I left. Stayed in LA for 6 more months, went back to Las Vegas for, I think, another 6 months, and then everything just went to shit again. Came back to LA. I got arrested for, long story short, I was doing a lot of, what brought me to my knees was meth, heroin, and alcohol, but the end of my addiction was pretty much me ending up in the hospital. I woke up in in the bed, in the room, whatever. I wanted to get out of there, and they wouldn't let me leave. So me being crazy as I was, I ripped the IV out of my arm and I bolted for the front door to leave the hospital. And the security guard was chasing me out of the hospital. And as I ran out through the front door, I turned around and he was there. So I kicked the glass door, and the glass door broke on the security guard. Now, it's LA. There's a lot of Armenian Persians. I'm Persian. He was a nice guy. He ended up not pressing charges. I just got a vandalism charge. But they ended up taking me to jail that night. I woke up in jail, not knowing how I got there, and then everything started, coming back to me. That didn't necessarily get me sober. I went on another run for about a couple more months, ended up homeless in downtown, and it was actually like a 300-400 pound Mexican guy. His name was Oso. I became like buddies with him on the street, and he told me one morning, I feel like it was a malach from Hashem. He told me one morning, he's like, look, dude, he's like, you have family, you have friends, you have people that want you to get better in life, and you're on the streets getting meth and heroin and drinking, and you're like an idiot, like all these people on the street, they have nobody. Either they're immigrants and they don't have anybody, or their family wants nothing to do with them, or everyone's dead in their family, or their family thinks they're dead, or they have a rap sheet from here to Shemayim with the courts. So they have no future. You have all these opportunities. So it kind of like shook me, and I was like, okay. So I got on the train in Union Station, came all the way back to the Valley, and I walked to my mom's house, my mom and dad's house, and I was like, I knocked on their door. They hadn't seen me in maybe a month. My mom kind of looked at me like, like she was looking at a ghost. She was very like taken back. I was probably 110 pounds, soaking wet, skinny, malnourished, not eating right, delusional. And I was just like, hey, I think I need to go to treatment. Now, I had a buddy at the time that was running a sober living in mid-city LA. So my mom called him, Israeli guy, super nice guy, Ezra. And he got in touch with some people in Sacramento. And that's pretty much how I got sober. I got on a flight that day or the next day. They flew me out to Sacramento. I still had health insurance. And that was it. I went to a rehab inpatient for 45 days. I had a 3-month order from the judge to go to rehab, but the insurance would only cover 45 days of inpatient, 45 days of outpatient. So I went to rehab. There was about 12 other people in that rehab, smaller rehab, beautiful, nice people. not like a luxurious place, but nice. It was in a house, and our outpatient was at a different area that they would drive us. And I really treated it like this is my only shot at, figuring out life, because addiction is not, you don't really have a drug problem. You take the drugs and alcohol away from a drug addict, they have a problem living life. So that's the issue, is that you need a design for living. So that's what I was taught in rehab for those 45 days. But then, you go to meetings, you meet people, you work the 12 steps, you surround yourself with people in recovery. And I was able to build a pretty solid foundation in Sacramento till I felt comfortable enough to come back to LA. Now, after about a year and a half, I was working, renting a place with a buddy, this, that, and the other. No Yiddishkeit, no Judaism. And, my family didn't care about that. They just wanted me to be alive and not overdose. So they're very cool about that. I moved back to LA August of 2017. So about a year and a half, 17 months. And, since then, I've just stuck to the basics, trust God, clean house, help others, which just means, you do the work in the rooms, you help other people get sober, and, you stay connected to people in recovery. We have a men's meeting every Sunday morning. It's a Jewish meeting, so to speak. I mean, there's a lot of people that aren't Jewish that come, but it's run by, guys in the community, and, it's, that's how we stay connected. You got to be vulnerable. You got to talk about it, because you could be saving someone's life. It's very unfortunate. There's a lot of suicide. There's a lot of ODs. There's a lot of, just people that wither away, and nobody wants to help them. And it's a shame. And I think that me sharing my story, letting people know, I'm sober, I'm Jewish, there's hope out there. Maybe some kid that's, 16 that, is struggling with, pills or heroin or oxys or whatever it is, whatever these fucking kids are doing these days, maybe he'll see it and be like, oh, there's hope. I've had plenty of people DM me, get in touch with me, Jews, non-Jews, people that I have no idea who they are. They just shoot me a DM, and we'll shoot the shit about what's going on in their life. And, are they an addict? Are they not an addict? And my first thing is, you should definitely just go to a meeting and look at the similarities of you and other people and see if, it could be of help to you. So that's pretty much it, man. Recovery is a lifelong thing. You got to work on it every day. Rent's due every day, and you got to put the work in every day, and that's pretty much, what my life is about, but good community out here in LA, You have a bunch of guys at shul that are sober. We do sober events, not sober events. I have plenty of friends that aren't sober. Once you get to a certain point in your life, in your recovery, you'll be okay with people, smoking weed around you, drinking. You know what I mean? It doesn't bother you like that. Early recovery is, it's going to be a little difficult, but you'll get over it.
Ali, seriously, that was one of the most amazing stories that I've heard, not just on this podcast, but in general, just talking about how you were literally cracked out on the streets of LA to now, becoming, let's be real here, becoming a sober person, a dad, somebody that works their butt off. It's just dude, this is, you're doing amazing, man. For you to be able to talk about your story and just everything that literally went wrong for you, but now you channel that into such positive energy. I can tell you're a positive guy. The vibe you give off is very positive.
Yeah.
And obviously a big part of that is you kind of realize you said you're the guy in the street that said, you have people that want you to get sober. You had something, your family was wanting you to get sober. That's just that's a gift from God that somebody told you that.
Yeah, I still feel like that was Hashem putting somebody, in AA we call it a God shot, or your aha moment,
Mm-hmm.
Your white light experience. Some people don't have them. It'll happen over time. You'll get a lot of aha moments, once you put some time together. But, there was plenty of other people that were asking me to get sober. family, friends. There's so many like little mini interventions that my friends and family tried to do that I either found out about or went and completely fucked up. I mean, I don't talk about them because there's no point, because none of that worked. And it wasn't necessarily that guy that talked to me that day, but that was the start of it, and just giving it a shot. My whole thing is that a lot of people, they never get sober, or they're functioning addicts or alcoholics, and they go through their whole life, white knuckling life, and, they're never happy. And you ask them how they're doing, and, could be better and almost all right. And, just fucking miserable. And Hashem didn't put us in this world to suffer. As Jews, we're not in the world to suffer. Yeah, we're in Galut, whatever, but we're not in this world to suffer. The main thing about this world is Tikkun Olam. We're here to bring God's light into the world. And it doesn't always have to be with Judaism. It could be with anything, helping somebody, helping the old lady with her groceries, doing a fundraiser for the kids, baseball team, whatever the fuck it is. However you want to make the world a better place, just do it. I have a buddy that we grew up together. He was my next door neighbor, and he's sober now. And he does these every 2-3 times a year. He'll go to Skid Row and he'll bring pizza, guys who cut hair, clothing, food, canned food for all the homeless people. And he'll just sit out there all day and just give back to people who have nothing, And we have a huge homeless problem in LA where, I'm not a fan of it, especially when it comes to our neighborhood. And, there's guys coming and stealing shit from the back of our apartment. But, my heart goes out to them because I've been in their situation. And with the recovery community and all the issues, it's not, you can't fight fire with fire in these situations. You need to come with compassion, understanding. There's a lot of mental health involved. A lot of these guys are out of their minds. I was fucking crazy. I think for the first year and a half of sobriety, I was completely different person than what I am today. Later.
You're amazing, man. And I think, just looking at your Instagram, I think some of the ways that you've kind of channeled that, I don't know if anger is the right word, but I guess maybe that you were once in a place where you were rock bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now you've kind of channeled that into, I mentioned from just a work ethic perspective, I see you're in the gym all the fucking time.
Yeah.
And I want you to talk about, the importance, people don't realize this. And I've talked about this in another episode, where the gym is not only good for your physical health. It's actually, I even argue it's better for your mental health. So I want you to talk about, going to the gym and man, you're absolutely in amazing shape. You're at the gym all the fucking time. Talk about, how you built up that work ethic in the gym. Because I know somebody listening to this podcast right now doesn't go to the gym.
Yeah.
And I am such a strong advocate of the gym. I don't care what kind of physical exercise you do, but going to the gym for 30 minutes a day and working your butt off helps you so much. So talk about your experience going to the gym and how that's kind of, you mentioned earlier how people struggling with addiction don't really understand how to live life in a happy manner. So talk about how the gym kind of fulfills that.
So the funny thing about the gym is that I didn't get into, in the beginning of recovery, I worked out a little bit. I didn't have a car. I would bike back and forth for work. So that was kind of my workout. Then, you put some money together, you get a car, and then you start getting lazy. It wasn't till I met my wife, who's my wife now. I was at 5 years sober, 4 or 5 years sober, because I've only been back at the gym a little over 3 years now, but I've been religious with it. I left working I used to work in recovery, and then I got into the construction business. And when I left working in recovery, there was a 4-month period where I had no work, and I was used to getting up super early to go to work. And I got up, and my wife, my girlfriend at the time, was like, "Hey, you need to go to the gym. You need to do something." So she was the one that pushed me to start going. And then, I went one day and I was like, that felt good. I went the other day, the next day. And, then, 1 month turned into 3 months, turned to 6 months, turns into a year. then you really start seeing the physical changes. And I think after the physical changes happen, it really becomes a mental thing. If we want to go, I really don't share about this, but in recovery, at about 4 or 5 years sober, I was really not doing well mentally. And a huge part of that was, COVID hit. Los Angeles was a fucking zombie place. Everything was closed. It was very depressing here. I was out of work. I mean, me and my wife, we went on so many trips. We would drive to Vegas, drive everyone on a road trip, all these things. We were just trying to keep ourselves busy. But I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, depression in sobriety, which is a dangerous place to be. And, I'm not really huge on taking medication and doing all these things until you take care of it from a physical aspect. So I started going to the gym after these, I would have like these panic attacks and these things would start happening to me. And I felt like the world's ending. And then I would go to the gym, and that really saved my life aside from sobriety. So I think for people that are struggling, because, if you tell someone that's depressed to go to the gym and suck it up, it's unrealistic because they're depressed. They can't even get out of their fucking bed. I say that because I've been there, so I know what it's like. People are always like, I see these like Instagram influencers and they're like yelling at the phone, and I'm just like, that's going to work for some people that are mentally okay, but people that aren't okay, it's not going to do much for them. You know what I mean? They're going to keep scrolling. But if you are struggling with any type of mental health issues, you need to find something at the gym. You don't even need to go to the gym. You just go for a run, go for a walk, go for a 2-mile walk, disconnect. Get out there, get some physical exercise. It's a huge help. It'll clear your mind up. It builds endorphins. It releases your endorphins in your brain. You'll sleep better. You'll eat better. Life just gets better in every different aspect. And the whole thing with the gym is that when you go to the gym and you get a great workout in, you're not thinking about, I'm going to go eat some greasy-ass, disgusting food. Like, when you work out, we could even connect it to Judaism. It's mitzvah, gorad mitzvah. So you do one thing, it rolls into another thing, rolls into another thing. Same thing could happen if you do shitty things. You're going to eat a shitty meal. You're going to go to sleep late. You're going to scroll on Instagram till, 3 in the morning. You're going to wake up late. You're going to be late for work. And then it's just a shitty cycle. So you could flip it and change it into a better cycle. When I first started going to the gym, I would go I'd get up at 4 in the morning and then go at 5 a.m. and I would be done by 6:30, and then I would go to shul from 7:30 to 8:30, and then I would go to work. So I started my day at 4. I get to work by 10. People are getting up at 9, rolling into work at 10, half asleep. I already got all my shit done. So I already conquered my day. When you do that, you're it's these little wins. You do a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And those little wins at the end of the year is this huge transformation. Nothing happens overnight. The gym is probably the most fair place in the world. You're only going to get what you put in. If you go to the gym and you do a little bit of workout, you're only going to see a little bit of result. If you go to the gym and you do a good workout and you continue doing it, you'll start seeing results, but it takes time. Everybody's different. Everyone's body's different. Some people will bounce back in a month. Some people it takes 3 months, 6 months, a year, depending how out of shape you are. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge advocate for the gym. I'm not we call them big book thumpers. I'm not out to get the whole world sober. I look at my sobriety I lost my privilege with drugs and alcohol, and I just can't handle it. I don't think the whole world needs to be sober, but I do think the whole world needs to be at the gym or some type of exercise, because it'll really change your life in so many different ways. I mean, and that's, all the props go to my wife for that. She's the one that got me back into working out.
That's amazing. Before we talk about your wife, I know you referenced earlier that you met her during AA, and obviously we got to go into forbidden love a little bit, but I want to even add on to what you're saying. You say everybody has to go to the gym, it's a must. I even argue that you have to go to the gym in the morning. There's this whole speculation of like, there's
Yeah.
no difference. And like, oh, if you go to the gym in the afternoon, you still get the same muscle growth as in the morning, whatever. I get it. Everybody's schedules are different. But Ellie, when you were talking about how like you win your day by 10 a.m., you're done with you win your day, right? Like you have work and you have the rest of like I'm the exact same way. Like I thought you were like, people think I'm crazy for going to the gym at 6:30. And when they hear like that,
Get up at 4,
you're just
get
like
to the
3
gym by
upping
5,
me.
yeah. You know?
My
Listen,
God,
you gotta do it. I mean,
I gotta turn it up, man.
Nowadays it's different. I have a kid. I'm not going to the gym at 4 a.m. and I actually just got a pretty bad injury. I have a pinched nerve somewhere around this area. So I've been out of order. This is going to be going on my 3rd week. It happened 2 weeks ago Thursday. So I had a pretty bad injury, but I feel like it was from, it's from Hashem. He's like, hey, you got to chill, be with your kid, be home. So this is the longest I haven't been to the gym in 3.5 years. But, and I feel it. Energy's kind of low, but I'm so busy with the newborn that it doesn't really matter, so.
Right.
But we're looking forward to getting back.
Again, guys, listen, like this, Ellie, like just talking about how he has a pinched nerve at the gym. Like he got a pinched nerve. And like, I can tell you right now, like, I'm so stubborn. And like, I hate like when anything prevents me from working out, it's like, I think of it as a roadblock.
Yeah, it's the worst.
But you're thinking of it as like, it's a gift from Hashem. You're absolutely right. Like you have a kid, right? You should focus on your kid, not the gym. And then when the time comes, you'll go back to the gym.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that I think I pinched the nerve because I had a strained neck that day and I still went to the gym. And then I went to sleep that night. I woke up Friday morning screaming. I never felt that kind of pain before. This is my first like real injury from the gym. So, you got to give your body some rest days. I used to be a 6-day, 7-day-a-week gym guy. I would leave the house, Motzei Shabbos, go to the gym. I'm not like that anymore. 4 or 5 days, you got to let the body rest. In the beginning, you'll get addicted. You'll want to always be at the gym. You go to the gym for 2-3 hours, but then once you learn how to work out, you could go and get a crazy workout in 45 minutes, if you do it correctly, an hour, and go to the sauna, go to the steam room. You leave there, you feel like $1 million.
Right.
It's it's free dopamine. That's what it is.
Right. It really is. I know the gym changed your life, and obviously a big part of that was meeting your wife. So I want you to talk about kind of that story.
Yeah, talk about life. So I can't talk too much. Can't talk too much about the show, but long story short, me and my wife, we met in AA, and when you meet someone, and then you fall in love, and then the whole religion thing comes into aspect and stuff. I got to give a lot of credit to my wife doing an Orthodox conversion, and many of you probably haven't seen the show, but doing an Orthodox conversion in 2024. Is, you'll read stuff in the Torah and, they'll talk about conversions and this and that. Who knows how they did it back in the day? Today, it's like a 1.5 to 2 years, classes. The woman is, you talk about an Asian style, that's her, an amazing woman. And the whole, our whole relationship started in AA, but we both had sufficient time of, my wife she just celebrated 15 years of sobriety. I'm coming up on 9 years. So when I met her, I had a little under 3 years and she had 8 years or 9, something like that. She had the amount of time I have now. She just celebrated 9 years actually, because we've known each other for 6 years now. So we've been together for 6 years, but that's a God shot. You know what I mean? Being with her, throughout this last 6 years of life has been an amazing, amazing thing. You don't need to give up on love if there's, religious aspect in the way. There's ways to go about it. My whole thing with life was that, and a relationship was that I want Jewish kids and I want to raise Jewish kids and I don't want them to be confused. I was raised with 2 Jewish parents and I still grew up very confused and very rebellious. And it's important to me, whether whether I was frum or not, or religious or not, doesn't matter. When it comes to the kids being Jewish, that was me drawing the line. And we were in love enough for her to want to do it. But the whole thing with her conversion was that she has to want to do it on her own. It can't be for me, and we always said from the beginning that, it has to feel right in here. If it doesn't feel right in here, we need to talk about it, because the last thing I wanted was, 5 years from now, her, holding huge resentment against me that, she converted, so the conversion was a beautiful thing. She's brought me back into the community a lot. It was like we both converted, that was kind of the crazy thing, was that through her Geirus, I've reconnected with the community. And she's a huge inspiration also, because she's very open about her sobriety as well. And there's probably plenty of women in the Jewish community that struggle with addiction. It doesn't necessarily have to be drugs and alcohol. It could be anything. And you could implement a 12-step system for any type of addiction: food addiction, shopping addiction, gambling addiction. Not that women are out there running to Vegas, putting the mortgage all on red. I'm just saying. So she's a huge inspiration to the community as well. And me and her, it was, a real bashert, when you feel it, you feel it, and that was it. Life it's tremendous. It really is tremendous. I've been on this bitachon thing for, I want to say, the last year and a half. It's been a big bitachon movement. I made a bitachon t-shirt, I started making bitachon t-shirts just for myself, not for a business. I love it. I sell roofs. If you need a roof, give me a call. But the bitachon thing is, like blind faith, trust in Hashem. No matter what happens in life, at the end of the day, it's all from Him. And yeah, He'll put tests and this and that in front of your face. The whole thing is that you need to go into it with being positive. Being negative never got anyone anywhere in life, And I know guys that have plenty of money and this and that, and they're completely miserable. And I know guys that have nothing and are completely happy. And I know millionaires that have the most bitachon and are super inspirational to me, and we'll learn in the mornings after davening, Guys that, you wouldn't even know that they're rich. Like, that's how humble these people are. And that's what's attractive to me, The money and all this and having a business and being successful, it's all great. Hashem take it away from you in 2 seconds, Knowing that it all comes from Hashem, whether or not you put 40 hours of work in the week or 80 hours or, you make yourself crazy, it all comes from Hashem. So, for me, when I met my wife, before I became frum, I knew that I always was connected to Hashem. I always acknowledged Hashem. And AA is very big into a higher power. They're very big into a higher power. I remember my first sponsor that wanted to sponsor me in Sacramento came to me and he said, because I go by Eli in the outside world, because people will butcher my name. Eli, they'll call me Eddie or whatever. He said, Eli, I need you to accept Jesus into your life. Could you do that? And I looked at him and I said, I'm not going to say his name, but I was just like, I'm Jewish. Even there at, 30 days sober with, no Yiddishkeit in my life, no Judaism, I still, I'm Jewish. So I was like, no, bro. And then he was like, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't be your sponsor because his higher power is that. And for me, it was always Hashem. So always very close to Hashem. My whole thing about God is that when I was using, I never acknowledged Hashem in my life. I was always pointing the finger, and you did this to me, and you did this to me, Hashem, and, why did you do this? And then I realized after I got sober that all these horrible situations that I put myself in, where I should have died, He saved me over and over and over and over. ODs, jail, living on the street, horrible situations. I got jumped when I was 20 years old, broke my face, had reconstructive face surgery. I didn't even talk about that. That was part of my story, getting sober the first time. It took me a couple of times to try to get sober, but I just let you guys know the last part. All these little things that, I could have, and I could use it today to be miserable and sit at home, but I really think, and it was funny. when I was sober, I flew out to Florida to go stay with my brother for a little bit, just for like a week or two. And it was his father-in-law sat me down, and it was Shavuos, and I wasn't from at all. He sat me down and we were talking, and I was like, going through it a little bit. And he said, and I don't want to sound like I'm preaching here, but for me, this worked. Now, when I look back, it worked. He said, when someone doesn't have Judaism or Torah or nothing in their life, they're not going to be happy. I thought he was crazy. I was like, dude, what are you talking about? And he wasn't talking about being from or religious. He was talking about having Hashem in your life. That's all he was talking about. And I took it the wrong way then. And now, 5, 6, 7 years later, I go back and I talk to him, and we talk about it, and we laugh. And I'm like, going to shul every day, davening. I'm chazan in my shul Monday to Friday, sometimes Shabbos for Pazuka de Zimra. Guys call me for advice about sobriety. We do business together. I always look back, and again, coming from a guy that was an addict, you look back and people are calling me for advice. I still get blown away because 8.5, 9 years ago, I was, living in a tent, smoking a meth pipe, out of my mind. So when people are like semi-normal and they're going through it and they're a little depressed and they're like, oh, I'm not going to make it. I'm like, bro, what are you talking about, dude? Like, you have all this life in front of you. And again, I have to respect everyone's bottom. People are going to hit bottoms in different areas. Somebody could lose a business deal and they'll feel like they're living in a tent with nothing, So that's their bottom. My bottom is really losing everything financially, mentally, spiritually, just out of my mind. Not everyone needs to hit that bottom, but emotionally we're at the same place, That's why when people come into AA and they're trying to get sober and they're like, I just drink and smoke weed on the weekends and, things get out of control. And I'm like, okay, how do they get out of control? Well, I don't make it to work on Monday. I don't answer my phone, and, I cheat on my girlfriend, and, I do all this crazy shit. I'm like, your life's unmanageable, bro. The weed and alcohol is like a heroin and meth for somebody else. And you can't handle it. That's your bottom. You don't need to do hard drugs to get sober. There's a Chabad treatment center in Los Angeles that we're in touch with. That the guys come to our meetings every Sunday and we talk to them. And it's not necessarily all Jewish people. There's guys from prison, black guys, Mexican guys, Asian guys. Everyone's one big family. Jews, non-Jews, doesn't matter. But the Jews that come in there, they're like, it's like they're so ashamed to talk about being an addict and being a yid. It's like, dude, it's not a big deal. You're not special. There's a million of you, You need to talk about it because, I've lost a lot of friends, They tell you in AA, when you first get to AA, they tell you to buy a suit and dress shoes. And you would think because you're going to be going to a lot of weddings, but you will be, but you'll also be going to a lot of funerals,
I want to just go to one final topic.
Sure.
Well, final question for you, Ali. So, you've obviously come a long way in these 8 years, right? 8+ years. You're coming up on 9 years. And you've, not only mentally, you've become better, physically, you've become better. But I guess, as somebody that's already improved so much, what are you going to do? We just had Rosh Hashanah, right? Jewish New Year, the English New Year is coming up soon too. What are you going to do for 2025? What are your goals to be even better than you already have? Which I don't know if there's even room for improvement.
No, there's always room for improvement. You're already doing such amazing things. So for me, it's like there's different goals in different areas of my life. So for my Judaism, I really want to focus on learning more because I was learning a lot more last year. And then, with life, getting married, having a kid, I want to learn more, but also I want to focus on Mincha. There's those two prayers, tapping in to Hashem and, in the middle of your work day or at night when you're home and you just want to watch TV and chill with your family. I really want to focus on that. I want to give more tzedakah. I really want to test Hashem this year when it comes to giving tzedakah because it's funny. Over the last 4 years, every Simplest Torah, the shul I'm at, they do all the bidding on Simplest Torah for the year. Every year I give more money, and every year I give more money, I make more money. It's the craziest thing.
Amazing.
And I'm Persian, it's like, Baba, I'm like, fuck, dude, So it really tests Hashem there. It's the only thing where Hashem tells you to test him. Everything else we're not allowed to test him on because he's Hashem. He's God. He runs the world. But with tzedakah, he tells you word for word, test me. So that's what I'm going for this year. And then in my own thing, for my secular life, I want to, not a secular life, just life in general. I want to be the best dad I could be to my kid and still be the best husband to my wife, I want, life is all about balance, I'm going into the new year. We had our baby September 7th, Daled El, the day after. So Rosh Chodesh El was 2 days, and then he came Daled El on Shabbos. This last 5 weeks, the first 2 weeks of him being born, I was very emotional, extremely emotional. I was just so happy that tears, I would just cry. I would look at him and I would choke up, and it was just the craziest feeling. And people would always tell me have kids is the best thing you could do, and I never understood what they meant till I had my own kid. And now I'm just in this world where I'm wow, So I really want to focus on being a good father and staying a good husband, being there for my wife, and just teamwork, teamwork makes the dream work. You know what I mean? Love is a beautiful thing, but there's also a lot of other things that go into a relationship. There's respect, there's help, helping around the house, especially when you have a newborn, doing all these things being the man of the house, being there for your family, so that's where I want to improve this year.
Ellie, man, you're an incredible guy, and I think you need to be on more podcasts. You need to, people need to hear your story more.
Yeah, man. Hey, well, this is my first one, so maybe it'll start something.
God willing, you're going to be on more podcasts, bigger than mine too. You deserve
Amen.
You deserve to be on the biggest and best podcast. So, I guess real final question for you. Where can people find you on social media to like follow your story, hear more about you, etc.?
So on social media, you could follow me at SoberMob26. It's SOBERMOB, and that was my
awesome.
That was my handle from when I got sober, and I never changed it. We're not hiding.
I love
you
it.
know.
I love that. I love it, Ali. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show.
You got
Make
it,
sure
David.
we share this episode with somebody. I think Ellie can say this, but and me more so. Like there's somebody that needs to hear this. I know there's somebody in your life, whether they're struggling with mental health or whatever it is. There's a struggle. Everybody struggles in their day to day, and kind of just listening to Ellie's story, will make you realize that you're a lot more lucky than a lot of people are in this world. And you can turn your life around too. If you're struggling with something, you can turn your life around. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the podcast. Make sure to follow Schmoozing Time on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Also, make sure to follow Schmoozing Time on whatever platform you are listening to this podcast on. Until next time, keep schmoozing.